So we are here at Stonewall National Museum, Archive, and Library. This is an oral history with two absolutely amazing people from the Fort Lauderdale area. They will introduce themselves now.
Hi, I'm G. Wright, or G. Wright Muir. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director of BLINC, which stands for Black LGBTQ Liberation, Inc., and co-founder of Thou Art Woman, which is a project that started back in 2014 with Nik Harris.
Yes, and I'm Nik Harris. Thank you for having us. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the co-founder with G. Wright, my pal, my friend, my business partner of BLINC and Thou Art Woman.
And you're both lawyers.
We are both lawyers. Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, when you started in law,
Yeah.
what was the reasoning behind, for you, G?
For me, I wanted to help people. I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, born in Manhattan, raised in Kingston, Jamaica, and grew up middle class around a lot of poverty. And always felt that I wanted to help people. My dad and my mom both were, like they say, civil servants, worked for the government. Then my dad ran a nonprofit called Projects for People. So I always saw like a sense of responsibility that if you had privilege, which I did in Jamaica, that I should be able to help people. So I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I feel like that's going to give me a way to help people. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I felt like that's a helping profession. And also could make a living.
That's certainly true.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
For me, I got there a little bit differently. Working class parents, both worked for the post office, squarely middle class. My favorite movie was Herbie. And so I thought that was the coolest car as a kid. I wish this story was not true, but it is. I told my mom that one day I would be rich, and in my mind, I was a kid who actually watched Perry Mason and lawyer shows, so I wanted to be either a lawyer or a doctor, and I figured they would make enough money for me to buy my mom a Volkswagen Herbie so she could go everywhere in this car. And my mom still tells that story that I was 7 years old telling her I would be a lawyer. And she's like, you never veered from that. Wow. So she did not get her Volkswagen. She drives a Prius, but I still helped my mom out. So that's good.
okay, so you became a lawyer, and you're partners with G, but you're also employed by the Human Rights Campaign. And what do you do there?
I'm vice president of strategic outreach.
And that means?
Everything outreach. What I love most is that, number one, we're the largest LGBTQ civil rights organization in the country. What I appreciate most is that I help create my position, but that I get to bring people into the Human Rights Campaign family. I travel all over the country talking about LGBTQ civil rights, fighting for equality and equity. But I also get to put an emphasis on BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, young folks, trans, non-binary people, so many of our marginalized communities. So I get to put extra emphasis and love and seasoning all on that work, and that's really the greatest gift I feel like in doing this work and that work.
So you get to bring along people who have often been excluded and bring them in to the single most powerful, probably, organization within the community.
Absolutely.
And as you do that, what are some of the tangible results that you've seen?
I mean, the biggest is this, to see the fight for equality. Even when I think about, I moved here 12 years ago to South Florida. I was originally from Tallahassee, Florida. And I was looking for whatever that equal sign meant. I knew that that was equality, and I wanted to become a part of that organization. So for me, I think the biggest thing is that I've been here for marriage equality. You and I were together the night marriage equality passed.
For Florida, we were here, right?
Well, for the country. Remember, we were celebrating. What was
in
it at
Wilton
the time?
Manors.
It was rumors.
We
It
were
was
there.
rumors.
Yeah.
In HRC, we threw this big party event. And to see that, to be here to see the work that the organization has helped do and the wins that we've, achieved, that feels the best. And then to be present as the Human Rights Campaign hired their first Black presidents of the Human Rights Campaign, and to be there during that time has been magical for me.
And interestingly, based on what Nik does for HRC, you together are doing with BLINC and Thou Art Woman. And that also comes out, as you just said, from your wanting to be a lawyer because you wanted to do good things for people.
Yeah.
So how does that synergy work all across the board? You've got that previous experience working as a lawyer. You've given up practicing law as a profession
Yes.
to take on the nonprofit stuff, which is doing extensionally wise what you wanted to do as a lawyer, and it complements the work that your business partner and friend is doing.
Yeah, it's interesting too because when we started Thou Art Woman, which started 7 years before the nonprofit, we didn't have a grand plan. We weren't like sitting in a boardroom and saying, hey, you know, let's do this thing, this event that's going to bring people together. We just really felt like it was this void that we wanted to fill. We didn't have enough spaces for us to hang out, to have fun, to be creative, to build community, especially as Black LGBTQ folks. So it's interesting that it wasn't like we didn't see this. It was we just saw like that day, July. I'm not sure if you see it differently, but for me,
No, I didn't see this that we're
right,
doing
10 years later.
But we knew joy was the foundation.
Exactly.
There's no way to be Black and queer in the Deep South and not constantly turn on the news and have a barrage, even pre-DeSantis, pre-Rick Scott, of hate, of seeing your community cut down, attacked on a regular basis. And that work is so important. That's a lot of the work we do with the Human Rights Campaign. But what we were saying was, who talks about joy?
Right.
Who talks about the joy that happens in this community? Like a community that symbol is unicorns and rainbows, right? Like there's the joy conversation that was missing. And so we came together just saying, I remember you saying, what is there for us to do to have fun?
So we felt like, we started with an open mic night, 1310 Gallery just down the road, and it gave a good opportunity for folks to perform from the audience. So, and a space like, we did a lot of spoken word, which is a great art form for people to express themselves, a form of poetry, and also had a space where people we're not judgmental of each other. So people could now talk about whatever they want to talk about. It could be things to do with joy, or it could be depression, or suicide, or breakups, or something sexy, or all these different things that people could talk about. So once we did that first one, then we knew we had to do more. People asked us to do it monthly. And we knew we couldn't do monthly. I was working full-time at the time for the Florida Bar. Nick was working full-time, Department of Transportation. So we knew we couldn't do it monthly, but we started doing it a couple times a year. And each one just got better and better. And people were just, it was clear, like, this needed to continue. And after 7 years of doing the open mics and then art exhibitions, then we decided to do the nonprofit to take it to another level. We knew that we would be able to expand our work. We still do arts and culture, but we're also doing health and wellness now. So it's 10 years of us doing this work like this.
I mean, I will say from my perspective, you are both some of the most admired people in the community. And it's almost awkward when you talk about how difficult it is, because I see you both being so welcomed and loved. Yet I know what you're talking about, because I too can turn on the TV and see the reality. And in the short time that I've been here, I can see the differences that you've made.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that part of what you're seeing is we helped create a community that you're seeing us be a part of. So lots of people, like, we had another great event just like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I said to my girlfriend, who's my girlfriend for 2 years, like, half the people who are my friends or more are people I know because of the Art Woman events. I was like, I didn't know these folks. A lot of folks, some of course knew each other, but we helped to create this space. So of course then we are well received too in that way, because it's like we create a space where people could build community. So we're
provide joy.
And provide joy. So like, we're peoples now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also say this. Number one, the community's been fantastic to us. We are very thankful for that. I don't think it's lost on either one of us, though, the level of comfort people have because of our education and background. And so to me, that carries a level of responsibility, because I think we are both aware that as we are out here trying to secure funding for an organization, the realities are that that I've seen, I think we've seen, it is harder for people of color to do that.
Definitely.
And so there's a level of credibility, that we receive walking in a door to say that we're lawyers, which we appreciate, but we're also trying to change that narrative as we support other Black, brown organizations doing this work to say, not everybody's going to be a lawyer. And yet they're doing amazing work, which is why what we try to do is uplift other organizations, because we could have kept doing Now Our Woman. In fact, that's all we were planning to do.
That was the plan.
And then David Jobin came to us and said, David Jobin, who runs our fund, said, you all, you're lawyers, you really need to set up a nonprofit. And I know if anybody could get to the next level, you all can. But he said, I want you to see something bigger. You had SunServe, and we appreciate that so much as a fiscal sponsor. He said there are other organizations being run by Black and brown folks that need someone to serve as their fiscal sponsor. And I think y'all are the ones to do it. And we were immediately like,
yeah, because we felt we don't have the capacity for that.
Yeah, that was
so it's like going from running a project to now running a nonprofit and running a project. So we definitely were very intimidated, but it's been going well. We're now at 3 years. First year was very rocky for us. A lot of grant writing. We've been fortunate to have local support, but we also need national support. So that has been, we're just breaking ground with getting some national grants. So, but it's a lot of grant writing and a lot of work.
All of this stuff is a lot of work.
Yeah, it
And
is.
the more layers that you have on top of you, the harder that work is just to break through and make change. You didn't start out thinking that you were going to be in the LGBTQ
Definitely not.
community. So where did you start?
I started off being extremely homophobic, extremely, and
Crazy story.
It was really, yeah. I'm in Kingston, Jamaica, growing up where there's a lot of homophobia, and I know homophobia is a lot of places, including right here, right? Of course, but the popular culture was through the music, especially, and through the church, was very anti-LGBTQ. And my parents, who had been abroad for many years, like America, lived in Spain, Mexico, had lived outside of Jamaica, were very liberal and open-minded. So I had a household that was very accepting of the community, but there wasn't enough, even though, of course, I looked up to my parents. When your peer groups and the music that you're loving is saying this is wrong, then I bought into that. And then now looking back, I understand some of it is also self-loathing. Like, I was understanding in some way very deep that perhaps I'm one of these people. So it made me more angry. So I teased, accused people of being gay in class, and a boy who was effeminate, I would imitate him and be like, hey, and try to be and this really, it was really harsh with people who are gay. And I was a DJ in college. I played dancehall music that was singing against gay people. I had arguments, just really very, very, very adamant that it is wrong. So it took a lot for me to go from that. And really what happened was a couple things. One is that friends of mine still living in New York City were twins, boys, came out as gay, and they're Jamaican as well. And it was this whole big thing. Their family was horrified, and I was horrified, and all this. And I remember feeling so uneasy. And there's a part of me I can accept now that I knew I was also that. And one of them actually became very mentally ill in that process. So it was really very serious that, wow, when these guys are both gay. My mom talking to me about it, I'm about 19. So it's the beginning of me having to really think about accepting it. My brother, who was straight, a part of the straight community, was always an ally. So he was very, very open-minded and would help me, which is also ironic because he's was experienced, as he said, masculinity differently. So he's not a very masculine guy, but he was not queer per se, but that was helpful. So yeah, I went from very homophobic to having to accept first my friends, and then actually within myself see accept that I'm attracted to women, and having to, and me fully accepting that it's now I was actually married to a man. So I'm married to David Muir, a popular photographer who was a DJ at the time, and we were in New York City starting a family, and I had to start to come to terms with it. But it was a really long journey. I could say it here in a few minutes like this, but it's a whole long journey of years of anxiety and panic attacks and really not wanting to be a part of this community. I tell people I felt I was cursed. I really felt like I was cursed. I don't want to be a part of this. And I like to share, it turned out to be a great blessing for me to be a part of this community.
And how many children do you have?
I have 2 sons, and I have a stepson as well. So 3 young men, now 32, 26, and 22. But at the time, it was little boys, and a marriage that I was really terrified to lose.
And what's your relationship with your ex-husband?
So David and me we call each other sexy exes. So we're really close friends. He's like one of my very best friends. So
And he photographs all
the Dark Woman events and BLINC events, and my boys. We're all good. Like, we'll do holidays together. Birthday party, Nick's there, we're there. David is there with his wife, who's a wonderful woman, Karen. So it worked out well. I didn't see that either. Like, it's all of what's happening is so much of things I couldn't imagine. But I was terrified that I would lose all this, and also lose respect in the community. I didn't want to be perceived as someone. At that time, when you're homophobic, you feel like that's the worst thing someone could be.
And yet, I would say that your innate goodness is why all of this good stuff has come to you, because you bring that to so many other people. So I'm glad that your life is good, because you are. When I see both of you at events, it makes me smile, because you just both exude the best of what the community offers.
I think also for both of us, I know that there's so much years, and it's so common in the queer community, I think wherever you are in the world, that you can't be yourself for so long. So there's this so much joy to be able to be yourself. So I think that's what you're seeing as well. And I grew up, Jamaica is a very confident culture, so I already had a lot of confidence in myself, but that part was shame. So once I could add and really include my whole self, then it's like I'm oozing with confidence.
This one definitely oozes with confidence.
And I also grew up in New York City. So Kingston in New York City also, very confident as well. Feels it's the greatest city. Jamaica feels it's the greatest country. So yeah, I think so. You see some of that, now that I can actually fully accept myself. Bossy. Yeah, in Jamaica we say bossy.
Yes.
And where did you come from that led you to where you are?
Church. So for me, I was 27 years old when I finally came out. I knew my whole life. My first earliest memory is having a crush on a girl, Lindsay, who I went to school with. And I grew up, my grandfather, who passed away 2 years ago now, he was 102 years old, sat in church every Sunday. I say, if you did not hear a sermon on sexual sin, same-sex sin, then it was an off Sunday. And so I grew up feeling like I can't tell my family I'm gonna lose everyone. I was a kid who contemplated suicide. I'm so thankful. When I talk to kids now, I tell them, just hold on, life really gets better. But I think about that all the time, and it kept me in the closet, because I said, well, I can't tell them until I can take care of myself, because I'm going to lose my whole family. And so that was 27 years old. I was finishing law school, and I finally came out, and I was terrified. And I told my parents, and I remember my mom saying, oh, we knew that. We were just waiting for you to tell us. And just thinking how many years I had tortured myself thinking that I would lose my parents. And my mom said to me at the time, I'm scared for you. You're scared for your children, she said, because of the world and how they treat LGBTQ plus people. But she said, why would you think you would lose me? You're our child, and parents love their children. And so I'm thankful that I had those kind of parents, that I still have them. I'm blessed to have my parents still today. But I have actually seen too many parents turn their backs on their children. So I still have to remind my mom sometimes. And she, in watching their journey is so heartwarming for me, because my parents went from saying, using hateful speech to refer to LGBTQ plus people, to now my parents are allies. Like, literally, I think it was 3 years ago, I'm sitting in my office. And my mom called me. I was working for Commissioner Freed, Nikki Freed at the time, as the first ever LGBTQ director to a member of cabinet in Florida. And my phone rings. It's my mom, and I'm like, "Hey, Mom, I'm busy." Now I take time to talk to Mom, but I was like, "Mom, what's up?" And she's like, "So can you tell me what my pronouns are?" And I was like,
yeah, you decide.
"Why do you need, what are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, we're getting ready to have dance class with the girls. It's my senior dance class, and I was telling them they need to, we need to use pronouns, and I want to be an example of that. So can you tell me what my pronouns would be?" And I said, "Well, yours would be she, her, hers." And we had a conversation about it, and I remember hanging up the phone and literally crying at my desk because I could not believe I thought back to that kid who would contemplate, like, is today the day I'm going to do it? Their lives would be better off, to see full circle, the importance of coming out. And I say that to folks when we sort of take for granted coming out day. And coming out is not for everyone. If it's not safe to come out, then there's some of us that can't. But I often share with people, you may be the person to make the difference. My parents were homophobic before their kid came out. And then suddenly that grace didn't just extend to me, it extends to the entire community. And so I'm really thankful that I could help transform my family. And I think the biggest takeaway for me at the time, that hurt at the time, but I understood it when I told my mom. She said to me, "I love you, I'll support you, but please don't ever tell your grandparents. They could never handle it. It'll kill them." And that's what's great. No, the dramatics of it. Yeah. And at the time I'm like, I can't be responsible for murdering my grandparents, and I said I would never tell them. And it was after marriage equality passed. I had gone to Inverness, Florida, where my grandparents live. At that time, my grandfather had to be 90. My grandmother then would have been late 70s. And marriage equality, there was something on CBS about it. We're sitting at the table eating dinner, and my grandfather looks at me and he says, "So what do you think about that?" And I got quiet, and my grandmother said, "Not now, Alan. Don't do this."
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I'll do what I want if I'm speaking to my granddaughter. I asked you, what do you think of this?" And I looked back at my answer and I said to him, "I don't think much of it at all, Grandpa. I think I just, people should be able to do their own thing. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it right now." And he said, "You know what I think? Everyone has to answer to God for themselves. And so everyone has a choice to make about what they will do, and it should be left at that." And I knew for my grandfather, who grew up during the Great Depression, World War II veteran, part of the greatest generation in this country, that was as close as he could get, but that was his way to tell me that he knew and that he was okay. And I never forgot that. And there was this moment of release for me to know that my grandparents knew. And so I said I lost my grandfather 2 years ago. I would say for the 10 years prior in his life, he met all of my partners. Not that it was that many, but he met my partners, and he would ask about them when I would visit. And my grandmother now is fully accepting, and to see the change constantly gives me hope about the possibility of what this place could be, this country could be.
That's quite an amazing story. Yeah. And it goes to show that your mother was wrong. You didn't kill them.
I did not kill them.
And they showed you how much they loved you.
Absolutely.
And that's really quite nice.
It is.
And it goes to show that what you are doing in your work parallels what you've done in your lives. That they're almost one and the same in a lot of ways. When you look at what the future holds for BLINC and Thou Art Woman, what is your visions?
I feel like one of the things that Nik talked about when we decided to start BLINC was to help other organizations. So I feel and see it coming to fruition sooner than later. Like, for example, right now we are going to be a fiscal sponsor for a young filmmaker making a film about some teenagers in Miami trying to get to Miami Pride. Someone just reached out to us last week to help them as well. So I feel like BLINC will be in a position that we need to grow, but as we grow, that we're going to be able to bring a lot of other Black LGBTQ organizers, creatives, in a place where they can have more access to funding and to be able to bring their own projects to fruition. The Art Woman's going to keep going. I mean, we just did one a couple of weeks ago, and seeing the energy, it was as if it was the first time for everybody. It was just so spectacular. So I feel like we'll be celebrating our 20th year anniversary before we know it. And we've been doing, open mic performances and art exhibitions, and now we have one at the Courtyard by Marriott just up the road or down the road that's there for 7 months, and meaning that people from all over the world who come into Fort Lauderdale could just walk in and see our work. So to going from a local gallery to like this hotel, I just feel like we're going to be getting more and more opportunities like that to showcase our work and our artists for many years to come.
For me, great. I agree with all of that. Great minds. We're usually on the same page. What I wish for the organization is to be nimble, to meet the needs of the community as it comes up. I never dreamed, thinking about marriage equality, that 10 years later we would have a governor and we're sponsoring legislation, don't say gay and stop woke. I think you have to be willing to meet the need of your community, because my dream is, I would love to be around for 10 years unless there's no need for it.
Right.
And the reality is that we were asked recently when we get help as well. And I think about Corey asked us, he said, you have to set your organization up in a way, does it end with the two of you, or is this something you want to continue? And we had to take a moment. I was like, I'd not really thought about that. For me, I don't think it's necessary to continue something just to continue it. I say to some folks, a lot of folks now want to set up nonprofits, and I'm not a dream killer. Let's start there. But what I say is, are you aware that someone does that? Too many times I find that you have organizations on top of each other. And if the space needs it, then you should do it. But sometimes I don't think we're paying attention to go, no, it's not pie. But if someone else is doing that and they're doing it well, even if they're not doing it well, is there a way to help them? If they're doing it well, then how do we still help them? And so what I say to folks is, I don't want to have BLINC because we needed a nonprofit. I want BLINC to be around as long as it's doing the work of helping people. Because one day I want to retire as well. I want to sit on a beach with G and chill out. But I'm not too tired to keep doing the work because our community needs it. And the day they don't, then I'll happily say it's time to close our doors.
Yeah. But because of what you do and being a bridge for other people who need a place to put their money so that they can do their work, that never has to end. There'll always be a filmmaker who will need a place to be able to raise funds. There'll always be someone who's going to write a book and needs a place to go to a nonprofit. So when you say ending, there are certain organizations that you certainly hope will end. Heart disease. I hope that doesn't
HIV.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that struck me this year in particular, we had our fund had a deep dive event. You were there, and looking at the artists, these folks are really like 20 years younger, at least than me.
They are.
And we have intern, someone who came to our event in December, and emailed right away or messaged right away on Instagram, wants to help. I thought she meant maybe help at the door or something, and she's like, no, I want to help produce events. I want to help. What do you need help with? And she's like, I can help you with marketing. She's like, I have a degree in marketing. So there's also that possibility of it being handed off or in some way to folks who are like, we want to keep this going, and us sharing how we've done this work. So we're not there yet, but seeing the interest when I was looking at that night in particular and saying, wow, these folks are all like 20s and young 30s. And
Gen Z.
right, yeah, exactly. And seeing their motivation and the excitement about the art woman and being there that evening, and it's overall like that people are still excited at that age, and new folks coming in, like the 29-year-old our intern, she hadn't heard of us, so she has this excitement. So I feel like that's something else we haven't talked about it, haven't thought about it much, but that's a possibility as well, that there might be people who be like, we would love to keep this going.
I think for me, I understood where you were going as well. I would love to. I'm going to spend the rest of my days being a philanthropist, right? I always want to help folks. When I travel the country, I say time, talent, treasure, testimony. You got to give at least one, but I tend to give all four, and I'll take all four from other folks as well. But, you know, I understand the power of that treasure. But if we're really doing the work of equity and we really want to fix what's broken in this country, then that means Black and brown and queer folks will be on true equal footing, will have the same opportunities. So my hope, even though that's hard to realize that during my lifetime, is that we're no longer in the position to have as many fights over some of these things as we currently do. And so again, then the work changes. How we can do that work changes.
Right, and the work may change,
Right.
but the need does not necessarily change.
Right.
And what you ultimately can do is then you all can pick and choose. There I go, you all.
We like it. We're going to make you Southern.
Can pick and choose
Right.
the quality of the work rather than just hoping that the work gets done.
Amen.
So
I hear that. You
okay,
preaching over there. I got you. Yeah,
you know, and
absolutely.
that's what I think is so amazing, because you have, as you explained, you know, you started and you did it. And then all of a sudden it started getting better, and the people who were coming to do the programs and the art and the spoken word were better than, not that they were better people, but the talent and the exposure that you were allowing to express itself improves. And the more people do it, the better they get at it.
I was going to say they grew with us.
Yeah.
So,
we have folks who started with us, who we launched. When we talked about that, there are folks who still say, hey, you know, I'm an established artist now, and my first launch, my first introduction was on a Thou Art Woman stage. And so to think about how often we undervalue queer art, queerness, undervalue people of color, Black and brown folks. So to see that women, right, exactly. It's amazing to see now when we can bring a spotlight that comes with us, and we want to use it to highlight other folks.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And go ahead.
I was just going to jump in. So we, BLINC, co-curated an event at the Island Space Caribbean Museum called Queer Caribbeans. And that was history, because the museum hadn't done anything to do with the queer community. And they got some negative attention and reaction from that. But we had one of the artists who came, Frankie Redwards, had performed. Now, I walked into the museum a year later, 2 years later, and Frankie Redwards is hosting an event at the museum. There's more. 2-3 weeks ago at Goosebumps, we go to an event they had, this is at the Broad Mall, the parking lot, 2,000 people. Wow. Reggae genealogy. I heard Frankie on the stage. I was like, what? I mean, hosting, she's one of the hosts for the evening. And so I messaged her, WhatsApped her later on that night or the next morning, and she said, you know, it's the art woman, why they even know about me. That's what got me to that. Now, she's someone who was established as an artist before us, but she's saying to get to that other level where Caribbean communities, she's Dominican and Italian, so she's part of our community, but she's like, they didn't even know about me. And the museum also giving the Caribbean community an opportunity to be more accepting and know, like, we are part of the community. So things like that also just feel like just really so rewarding and magical.
And what you're also doing then is you're bridging the gap, because even within the communities of color, there are hierarchies.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you came from Jamaica, which is a predominantly Black country.
Yes.
And then you came to the United States, which demands that it be a white country. But you came with that confidence of growing up in a place where you were equal because you were there.
Yeah.
And you brought that with you, which means that you don't have to compromise on who you are that way. You had the compromise on admitting that you were part of the queer community, but not on color.
Being black, right?
And,
yeah,
and
like
so that changes.
yeah. Growing up in Jamaica, I felt, and I know it's not the same for everybody in Jamaica. I grew up middle class, so there some people would feel different based on your class. But growing up feeling that blackness had nothing to do with whether or not I was going to succeed or not succeed. No low expectations. No. When we moved back to New York City in the 80s, my brother we were living in Riverdale, New York, and my brother, who in Jamaica, seeing him, people would know what we call uptown. You know, he's an uptown kid, right? Middle class or a wealthy kid. And he said to me, I was crossing the street and this woman wound up the window. And I'm like, why? Why would she want? He was like, because I'm black. I was like, what? But like, because in Jamaica, like people would just know that this guy is not a threat in any way. And then we would, the news, when you hear the news go like, a black man was charged. We're like, why are they saying that it's a black man? Because in Jamaica, you're not going to hear, they're just going to say a man because it's a black country. They're not going to say black. So just experiencing those things, you're like, wow, this is so very different. But then, thankfully, being in Jamaica from age 5 to 15, I didn't have those thoughts and feelings of me thinking that things there's gonna be low expectations or I'm gonna be lesser because I'm black. I mean, being black in America, you figure it out pretty quickly. These are the things that are supposed to be the case, but definitely didn't feel that. And that does make a difference for me.
And how did that help you, like, in law school?
Well, I feel, very much like, and I'm feeling very confident to speak in class, which is something that can be terror for people, even in law school, where they go, Socratic method, and they also can call on anybody. So I felt very confident to speak in law school, felt confident when we were taking the bar. I took the New York and Connecticut bar and was confident I was going to pass it, was sure. I studied hard, though. It wasn't just like, I want to do it. No, it's like I really work hard. Both my parents, my dad especially, is big on work ethic and working really hard. So I knew I had to put the work in, but also knew like I am going to do very, very well when I put my work in.
I will say this about one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. I say often G is my soulmate, one of my soulmates. Because also mates don't have to be romantic. Right. I say, even though people are like, are y'all together? No, we're not. The things I have learned from G, because even as I was out being here, I met G pretty close to the time that I had moved here, and she was wearing suits and I was still at Department of Transportation, and I would wear a suit to work but not a tie, and I would see G in a full suit, tie and everything, and I was like, my mind was blown. And I remember having a conversation with you about, I'd like to do that up at Transportation, and you were like, just do it. And I was like, you got to understand how this works, and then this and that. And it gave me the courage to do it. And now it's weird to think back, because now I'm just like, I have to be myself. But part of that was because I had a homophobic boss. And later he was trying to fire me because I was out on the job and dressing in a way that he felt was not appropriate because my dress was more masculine. But I say this with G's confidence, it pushes us to the next level all the time. At this point, I've joined G, but this one here, absolutely nothing. Like, sometimes I have to come in and be like,
read me
in. Please come back. Because this one will be like, so you're going to run for president next week. We get you in the White House, and then I'm like, pal, come back with me, because there's literally nothing that you think you can't do. I mean, that's the reality, and it's the whole family. And so when I'm around the whole family, there are no bad days. There's nothing you can't accomplish. You don't like your job, walk off of it right now. You'll find the next best job that same day. And I'm like, what is this? And it's beautiful and infectious, but I thank G for that. I really do. I thank you for that, pal.
Thank you, pal. It's funny when you're saying, someone just said to me, I think my girlfriend Sammy just said, my partner, something about being worried about being fired. And I'm like, that's a blessing. I said, if you get fired, that's a blessing. And she's like, okay.
This is literally how they operate.
Yeah. Well, I want to actually share how me and Nik met. So I was working for the Florida bar, and one of my colleagues came back from, he was picked on a jury. And I was like, oh my gosh, who picks a lawyer on a jury? Like, I was like, who is that? Who is the attorney in the court? And he's like, funny enough, two of us. I was like, there was another lawyer on your panel? And he's like, yeah. He's like, funny enough, she looks just like you. And I was like, what? He's like, she is like, you got to meet her. She looks just like you. And I was like,
and see, so this is the thing. I meet him on this thing, and he is on the panel, which it is a bad idea to put lawyers on panels. That person was acquitted. They didn't prove their case, but it was proof of why you don't want us on there. But he was annoying me because the entire time we're on the jury, he keeps saying, I know someone who looks just like you. And I'll be honest, at the time, I told you this, in my mind, he's a white man. I said, here we go in my head. We all look alike. I just get out of here with this. He's like, you have to meet this person. He gives me the number.
So what happened? So he tells me about Nik, but he couldn't find her card. So a couple of weeks go by, and it's so interesting. I'm sitting at my desk, and our office is side by side. And I'm like, Alan, where's the card? And he's like, and I'm like, I need the card. You have to find it. And I don't know, it was like this urgency. And then I emailed her, and I'm like, dear, I don't know if you would have said Nik at the time, but said, dear Nik, let's do lunch, very proper. Like, I'd like to meet you. And let's hang out. And for the Florida bar, you need to have people from the community serve on grievance committees. You need lawyers and non-lawyers. So I was offering like, oh, I think you maybe told Alan you would serve. So it was like, we would love you to serve on a committee. Please just come and have lunch.
And when I got the email, I went, damn it, they're following up. Jesus, I've already served on a jury. I've given everything I owe to the community right now. Yeah. And so this is terrible. But that day I was like, go ahead and tell them your stomach is hurting. You can't go, your stomach isn't hurting. I'm not a person who, even on a job, I don't usually go to lunch. I'm a big saver. And so I was just like, I don't do lunch anyways. I'm not going to go. And I remember it was nothing for me to write, hey, let's try a different time. And I don't know why. In that moment, I just said, I'm going to go. And I kept wondering, why am I going? This guy I meet randomly on a jury. He tells me this. I know I'm going to go. This person's not going to be anything like me. And when we walked in, I truly say it was, for me, it was like love at first sight. Truly. There was a connection. Right away.
And it's funny because we had my friend, it was like me, Alan, and Nik. And it was just like,
yeah, we were like, get out of the way. And we couldn't stop speaking.
And he was
to each
so
other.
happy to. And so it happened to, so we meet, we're like, oh yeah, you're going to serve on a committee. And maybe 2 weeks later, I'm at this lesbian party down here in Fort Lauderdale. And I look over, actually, so you don't mind me saying your proper name, right?
Yeah, no, you're good.
So I look, and I'm like, Shanika? And you're like, call me Nik. And I was like,
yeah,
Nik. And I was like, and then my mind was like, wow. And then she knew a bunch of people in the community I hadn't known yet. So I met a bunch of people that night. We took a picture together.
We did.
And then
we still have that picture.
Yeah, and that's the beginning of like this friendship growing and feeling like, so that woman wouldn't be here, but for like that connection that we had.
I agree.
To keep it, to start it, but also to keep it going. That we would just felt instantly. The other part I want to share is before Nik was like dropped into my life like this, of someone I was dating, Amy. She came out, she lived in Oakland, California, and she came and she saw my life, and I'm close to my ex-husband David, a lot of friends, but like everybody was pretty much straight, and nobody, and some people were queer but would be like an ex-girlfriend, so feminine, but she's like, you don't have one friend that's like you. And I was like, oh yeah. She's like, you don't want a friend that's like you? And I'm like, I never thought about it. And she's like, you should have a friend. And this really, right after that, it's like, Alan is like, I have this person you should meet. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, so at someone's like, the person you said I should have is in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
manifested.
Manifested.
Yeah. I think what G excellent care of herself, from your yoga to your swimming. I think both of us are very in touch with getting quiet. And so I'm actually big on affirmations, meditation. And when I say 100% more than I think any other time in my life, I could feel spirit drawing me to G. Drawing me to
Definitely.
G. And it has been like that since we met. So I joke about people saying, are y'all in a relationship? But I understand it because there's something else happening there that I know is so intentional. So I look at what we do and with BLINC and Thou Art Woman, and I know before we do it, it's going to be successful because I feel like it was ordained for us to meet, for us to do this
and
work.
to do this work.
To do this work.
We say work, it doesn't feel like work.
It doesn't
I mean, it is, and sometimes extremely difficult, but still, it's joy in the work to do this.
No, the energy that comes from the two of you is palpable. I mean, you can feel it, you can almost see it. And the love between you is very obvious. And that breeds love around you.
Yeah, and I'm going to share too, 2020, like many people, I was like, it's time to pack it in. And Nik was like, pal, no, we can do this. Tell me what I need to do. Let's do it. And I spoke to maybe two other people that I would confide in. And one person would be like, I get it. And another person's like, no. And then I told you. And you're like, pal, no, let's do this. And we were doing well. All of our events always did well. But we got to another level after that. We got more funding. We started the nonprofit. So it's like, we wouldn't have seen BLINC and the growth that we're experiencing. And there's just much more to come. So thank you for that, pal.
Thank
Always
you.
appreciate that. We would still have a great friendship and have fun, but it's like that we could do this and have this influence and bring these experiences and resources to the communities.
It's clearly an extension of who you both are. I mean, it's not like there's a beginning and an end. It's a continuation.
Yeah.
And the community is very lucky that you two serendipitously found each other
I agree.
because it has added so much. One of the most important things, and you both bring this out, is a sense of history, a sense of understanding not only where you come from, but how where you're going is so based on those experiences that have led you to this point. How could you use history and infuse that in a way that helps younger people know that where you come from gives you the strength and the information and the skills that you need, so that you know when it gets when you get older it can get better?
Absolutely. That's I think for me it's interesting the role education played in both of our lives. When I think about you, when you talk about your dad, for me it was my grandfather, the one I said has passed away now. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, I graduated undergraduate from Florida A&M University, our largest HBCU in Florida, in Tallahassee. My grandfather graduated when it was FAM College.
Wow.
I am a third generation Rattler, and I tell people I didn't even have a choice to go to college. That was the floor in my family. And so for me, my grandfather drilled into us understanding history, loving Black people, loving yourself. So for me, when we met and we talk about that, for us, I try to talk to young people. I have a niece and nephew right now, and I think about these phones. They're always on these phones and technology, which I love as well. But we say it, and I'm not the first to say this, but when we think about Harriet Tubman didn't have email and social media and cell phones and internet, and literally release generations of enslaved people. And so if we don't understand like what's happening now isn't new, what's happening with our government isn't new, if we would take the time to learn and recognize that your history is so important, it's so rich, not just from an education standpoint to sort of see the future. You can sort of predict things that you expect. You can go find out what someone else did, right? We're still taking lessons from, Los Angeles and New York and Stonewall that have helped us get to where we are in the LGBTQ movement. Could do the same things with our history. But also for me, it's encouraging because it's proof that we will overcome, proof that we will succeed, because I do find I have a family member right now, young, who's struggling with depression, and we are trying to get them help. But when I spoke to a couple doctors, they said, "Oh, all young people are struggling with depression now. That's just the norm." And when you talk to young folks and they're so discouraged and they feel like this is the worst it could be, and I go, no, it's we've come a long ways. And we've still got a ways to go. But if you're just focused on that phone and those screens all day, it's so easy to be depressed. And so I say to folks who are parents, get your kids off of these screens. I talk to young folks all the time. That's one of the areas we keep discussing our work going into, because you've got to bring these young people in order for there to be the future generations to do this work. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I'll just add that being Black and queer
And a woman.
Right?
And a masculine presenting woman at that.
One of the things is, like, especially as coming into the queer community late, right? I really just started to know like a lot of history that people knew for many years, like something like Stonewall riots in the 1960s. It's more recent for me. I feel it's helpful for people to know, like, I think we know, like, many of us have backgrounds from enslaved folks, but also to know, like, in terms of the LGBTQ movement, that Black people and brown people were at the front lines of that is also very helpful. So as folks, sometimes people, I heard a lot when I was homophobic, that people sometimes felt that being queer is something that's not Black. It's not a part of our community. And it's obviously a part of us, but not just a part of us, is that we've led it and we've helped lives improve in this country and other countries. The other part is helpful. When I look at Jamaica, where there's still like anti-sodomy laws and just overall no protection for LGBTQ people. Then I look at America and see how far America has gotten in a short time. It also helps inspire me as a Jamaican American to say, like, okay, so my home country, sometimes it feels impossible, but I'm like, I know when I read stuff and see stuff that I know people who are alive and well who are like, no, I grew up in a city where this is the stuff that was allowed to happen, or people couldn't get a job not so long ago. People couldn't be openly queer not so long ago. So I feel like there's hope for places like Jamaica and other places in the world. So I think it's good to know like how recent this is happening as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's shameful that people don't understand that the LGBTQ liberation movement is the product of the labor movement, the civil rights movement, and the women's movement. And one reason it was able to go so fast is because the best and the brightest, when they could start working within LGBTQ organizations, left the women's movement and the labor movement and the civil rights movement to join. So when you get the experience of a Bayard Rustin,
I was about to say that,
who could do everything with blindfolded and his hands tied behind his back, forget cell phones and computers, how could you not move fast? And when you look at the other people who were also at the forefront, it is astounding to me. But you are, in my mind, in a sense, I always envision a world, specifically in America, where instead of spending $1 trillion or two on oppressing people, imagine where we would be if that was invested in people. And when I look at what people of color have achieved with oppression, and when I look at what the queer community has done with oppression and what women have done under oppression, I can only imagine if that money had been invested to get the best and most out of those people. And I say that if Carver could do what he did with the Peanuts and face unbelievable racism, and what, now I'm going to forget her name, who started that company for hair care and other products.
I know you're talking about Madame.
I don't know why right this second I am literally drawing a blank.
But her name,
C.J. Walker.
C.J. Walker.
Madame C.J.
What
Walker.
she was
Yeah,
able
Madame
to
C.J.
do as a black woman at one of the worst times to be a black woman. And you can go down the list, the women from NASA, you know, I mean, I'm dumbfounded at what the potential for this country could have been. Because all of this did it with everything against you. And that's what I see when I look at you, is that you're from Florida, which is the South.
Very much deep South.
And you, right, where you came from, you might as well have been in Alabama. And you came as an immigrant. And the United States isn't always friendly towards immigrants, even though you came into an environment where you were still living in a middle-class neighborhood. I mean, nobody is going to feel sorry for people who grew up in Riverdale.
Right, exactly. It's a suburb in the Bronx that looks like, it's very nice,
where the Secretary General of the UN lived, and I mean, it's not bad.
No, it's very nice. Also, experiences like being in the elevator. My grandmother had bought an apartment in Riverdale, and my aunt, she bought an apartment there, 2 stories below, and I'm in the elevator, and they're like, "What family do you work for?" I'm like, "What?" They're like, "What family do you work for?" I'm like, "What Oh, no, we own apartments here." It's like, oh. Or, it's like this whole other perception of how this not being accustomed to how I'm being perceived by. Right. It's like, what do you?
That's right. I can't help but laugh because part of how. Thank you. Before we started the interview, you gave me a compliment where you said, Nik, you look mighty rested, and I've changed my morning routine so I can prepare for whatever the world has in store for me when I'm doing this work. But that made me think about, I was listening to Oprah Winfrey was talking about growing up when she got sent away to live with her grandmother, and her grandmother cleaned house for rich white people. And she said that her grandmother would take her out and say, "You make sure you pay attention to how I'm washing these clothes, because if you pay really good attention, you too can hopefully get to work for a rich white family one day." She said for my grandmother, that was the largest dream she could have. She said, and I thought to myself, not so much. And she said, I often think now, if my grandmother could see me, I got white people working for me. And so the fact that those things were readily available to me, that I came up in a family where we were taught, here are the accomplishments of black people. So then there was no limit. I'm always not surprised, but I'm thankful when I hear other black people tell me, all the folks who told me I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I don't understand either,
My family never told us that. I struggle right now because my mom, every time I do something, is like, "That's great. What's the next thing you're going to do?" And I go, "Mom, is it possible to allow me to sit in this space right now? Celebrate this moment, please."
Wow.
But it was always the expectation was to achieve. Always was the expectation. And to give back.
Well, I want to say that we are celebrating the two of you, and I want to thank you both for joining us here at Stonewall, and look forward to as many possible collaborations as possible, because you add such value to the community, and getting to know you has been one of the things that I appreciate most about being here in Fort Lauderdale. So thank you both very much.
Listen, thank you.
I was about to
Thank
say
you
that.
for this
Thank you.
opportunity and the work you do with the museum here. And I've learned a lot. Like I said, for me, I'm newer to the community, so I have to learn, like remedial LGBTQ history. So it's been a good opportunity to be connected to the museum. And then we're going to give you our materials so that 100 years from now and 200 years from now, people can like, oh, this is what we did. We have booklets and pamphlets and all kind of things that we're going to share, and videos. And so
That's
thank you so much.
And I was just going to say thank you, because the fact that you took the time to make sure all stories are included
Yes.
means the world to me and to us and to the community.
Well, the fabric of history is everybody's stories coming together. And if we leave them out, we're not telling history. And history is vitally important to this organization and to building the kind of community that we want to see. And I know when I think of uniters versus the dividers, and there are many dividers, it's easier to divide than to bring people together. The pantheon of uniters, looking at Dr. King, looking at Nelson Mandela, very often were marginalized people, even in countries. South Africa is predominantly black, even when it was run by white people. But the uniters were people of color. And I think that what you're doing here continues that thread of people who understand other people and bring people along and don't push anyone out of the way, but make everybody feel a part of your ride. And it is an amazing ride. And I'm just glad to be here to experience that, because you guys are amazing. And I love going to your events. I love what you do, and I love the philosophy behind what you're doing. And now knowing more about how that friendship happened, it just makes so much more sense of why it's perfect.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Love you,
I love you. I love you too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.